is not physical. That sense is not physical organ. What is that sense? It is in itself supra-physical. And this is not sufficiently recognized or understood. That basically sense itself is supra-physical. And even the object that we see, what is that object which I call physical? Is it really physical as in itself? If you really believe the modern science that this table consists of protons and electrons and so on, and that is the real reality of it. And these are like hollows, actually speaking. If you take a picture of this table as it is full of hollows, which I don't perceive at all. So in what sense is my perception of this table an objectively real experience? Now these questions are not at all debated by scientists. They are, as it were, a priori. You don't question, this is what happens. I must have this thing happening with my physical senses. Whatever that sense may be, I must have this measurement, I must have this experience, and that is all. But it is certainly refusal to inquire further. We must inquire what is really the sense. That is why in India it is said that manas is a sense, sixth sense. It is recognized in India. Manas is a sense. And manas is not an organ, physical organ at all. It is recognized to be the sixth sense. And the powers of this sense can be cultivated, as a result of which many phenomena which are not dependent of physical senses can be had. And in fact, as Aurobindo says, all the world is actually more than 9/10 supra-physical. Only physical is a little fret, a little margin of the supra-physical. The whole world, we are all the time living in a great supra-physical world. Everything is supra-physical basically. Our emotions are supra-physical, feelings are supra-physical, our senses are supra-physical, our aspirations are supra-physical, our relationships are supra-physical. We live constantly in a supra-physical existence. And we take pell-mell our world as it is. And there is a kind of a feeling that this world is tangible only when we can touch it. But this is a demand which itself requires to be questioned. In fact, you should demand a deeper demand. Are there supra-physical senses by means of which the supra-physical world can be touched? The proof of a supra-physical world should be based upon supra-physical perception. Can you supra-physically, by supra-physical sense, can you see supra-physical world? And if you have measurements of that, then you can have another science, a much better science, much more important science, and that is what is absolutely necessary for us to develop. We move forward. This derivative objectivization is certainly possible. If there is an association of the action of the subtle body and its sense organization with the action of the material body and its physical organs, then the supraphysical can become outwardly sensible to us. This is what happens, for example, with a faculty called second sight. It is the process of all those psychic phenomena which seem to be seen and heard by the outer senses and are not sensed inwardly through representative or interpretative or symbolic images which bear the stamp of an inner experience or have an evident character of formations in a subtle substance. There can then be various kinds of evidence of the existence of other planes of being and communication with them. Objectivization to the outer sense, subtle sense contexts, mind contexts, life contexts, context to the subliminal in special states of consciousness exceeding our ordinary range. Our physical mind is not the whole of us, nor, even though it dominates almost the whole of our surface consciousness, the best or greatest part of us. Reality cannot be restricted to a sole field of this narrowness or to the dimensions known within its rigid circle. There is a very interesting lecture that Swami Vivekananda gave in America. It is reproduced, the whole lecture is reproduced under the title Powers of the Mind. And I don't know if that book is easily available here with you. I think if it is if you bring it, I'll be able to, because it's a very interesting evidence which he has provided from his own personal experience and example. And these facts which he has described, even today since Swami Vivekananda has narrated them, and narrated in a lecture that he has given, they need to be taken quite seriously. It is his personal experience and account of his own personal encounter. And it's amazing. And I cannot even today can explain this particular phenomenon that he had seen with somebody whom he had gone to see along with his friends. And it was said about him that he can foretell the things and he has many powers and so on. And let me read out to you, because it's a very interesting account that he himself has given. And there is a need today in our present world to collect all these authentic facts and present to the field of knowledge. It is a knowledge which sometimes is, in India for example, it is left to be believed for those who want to believe and to go ahead with the physical world as it is and not to bother too much about it. But I think the time has grown very ripe when one has to make a very serious study of this and make a real science of it and develop it further. And fortunately, with a lot of literature now available from Aurobindo and the Mother, this would be not so difficult to, and also therefore to lay down the conditions and even to test so that charlatans can be exposed, and you can say that people who claim falsely, even these false claims can be examined and can be exposed. And that also is necessary, because in the name of the supra-physical anything goes, and people begin to have great experiences and great faith, and afterwards they are found to be fake, and then you feel you were deceived in your life. Oh, you got it?
It was in the second book.
Oh, thank you. Jyoti, can you read out this chapter, because it will give me some relief. Read from the beginning.
The powers of the mind, is that too loud? The powers of the mind, delivered at Los Angeles, California, January 8, 1900. All over the world, there has been the belief in the supernatural throughout the ages. All of us have heard of extraordinary happenings, and many of us have had some personal experience of them. I would rather introduce the subject by telling you certain facts which have come within my own experience. I once heard of a man who, if anyone went to him with questions in his mind, would answer them immediately. And I was also informed that he foretold events. I was curious and went to see him with a few friends. We each had something in our minds to ask, and to avoid mistakes, we wrote down our questions and put them in our pockets. As soon as the man saw one of us, he repeated our questions and gave the answers to them. Then he wrote something on paper, which he folded up, asked me to sign on the back, and said, "Don't look at it, put it in your pocket, and keep it there till I ask for it again." And so on to each one of us. He next told us about some events that would happen to us in the future. Then he said, "Now think of a word or a sentence from any language you like." I thought of a long sentence from Sanskrit, a language of which he was entirely ignorant. "Now take out the paper from your pocket," he said. The Sanskrit sentence was written there. He had written it in an hour before with the remark, quote, "In confirmation of what I have written, this man will think of this sentence," unquote. It was correct. Another of us who had been given a similar paper, which he had signed and placed in his pocket, was also asked to think of a sentence. He thought of a sentence in Arabic, which it was still less possible for the man to know. It was some passage from the Quran, and my friend found this written down on the paper. Another of us was a physician. He thought of a sentence from a German medical book, it was written on his paper. Several days later, I went to this man again, thinking possibly I had been deluded somehow before. I took other friends, and on this occasion also, he came out wonderfully triumphant. Another time, I was in the city of Hyderabad in India, and I was told of a Brahmin there who could produce numbers of things from where nobody knew. This man was in business there. He was a respectable gentleman, and I asked him to show me his tricks. It so happened that this man had a fever, and in India there is a general belief that if a holy man puts his hand on a sick man, he would be well. This Brahmin came to me and said, "Sir, put your hand on my head so that my fever may be cured." I said, "Very good, but you show me your tricks." He promised. I put my hand on his head as desired, and later he came to fulfill his promise. He had only a strip of cloth about his loins. We took off everything else from him. I had a blanket which I gave him to wrap round himself because it was cold, and made him sit in a corner. 25 pairs of eyes were looking at him, and he said, "Now look, write down anything you want." We all wrote down names of fruits that never grew in that country, bunches of grapes, oranges, and so on. And we gave him those bits of paper. And there came from under his blanket bushels of grapes, oranges, and so forth. So much that if all that fruit was weighed, it would have been twice as heavy as the man. He asked us to eat the fruit. Some of us objected, thinking it was hypnotism. But the man began eating himself, so we all ate. It was all right.
एक सेकेंड